All right, it's Robert Phoenix here, broadcasting to you live from Fredericksburg. Got a bit of a false start today. I was on the wrong channel. I have these two channels where I do astrology mostly on one channel, and then I do the 15 Minutes of Flame stuff over here on this channel. And sometimes I get caught in the switches. So some of you may have gotten the alert to go over there and saw maybe just a snippet of me over there. Well, I'm over here now. Doing what I'm doing today here. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Now I'm just waiting for a few people to show up so you can begin to hear all the revelatory things I'm going to share with you today. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. I'm even early today. Maybe that's why nobody's here. What if I did a stream and nobody showed up? Hey, there's Anna. I got my first person today. Good morning, Anna. How are you? What's going on? Number one in the chat room. Sitting on the front row there. I can see you. Very odd. Getting no counts for people. Anyway, I'm just going to go on with the show. But I'm sure that hundreds and hundreds of people are going to show up shortly. So today we're going to be talking about some of the dynamics that are happening on a global level, and there's a big dance craze sweeping the planet. It's called "Do the Populista," and populism still continues to be on the rise, even though the mainstream media doesn't want to report it. And I'm going to get into this idea that maybe, just maybe, populism is an astroturfed movement, perhaps, and that what we're seeing in France might actually be not just organic, but also amplified, instigated. Anytime you get a large number of people together, there's a lot of chaos, and chaos presents opportunities. Ab ordo chao, out of chaos order, right? So there's Judy. Hey, Judy. Nice to see you. Right on. Good to see you here. So I'm going to be checking some of this out today, along with a few other interesting stops and notices around what's going on with the planet. Hey, Justice, what's happening? I guess my counter is just not working today. I guess my counter is counterintuitive. Or non-counterintuitive. Hey, I got a thumbs up. What's going on? Got one thumbs up. It's great. Hello, Jennifer. How are you? Good morning. Good morning. So there's a lot happening. Always, every day, there's so much going on. Hey, Karen, how are you today? I was listening to Jeff Friends the other night, and he had Catherine Austin Fitts on. What's going on, Michael? From Taos. He had Catherine Austin Fitts on, and Renz was saying he's never seen anything like this time before. Never, ever. And I'm in complete agreement. It's like the water in the pot just keeps getting turned up, and it's getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And a lot of people don't notice it, but man, we are boiling in a kind of a global cauldron. And it's an amazing and fascinating sort of process to to witness, because we've never seen anything like this before. Have we ever seen a president in the United States, short of Nixon, like towards the end of Nixon's term, and he was public enemy number one. Everybody was gunning for Nixon, right? Everybody was gunning for Nixon. Hey, Steve and Chris. So we've never seen anything like this with Trump. I mean, even before he set foot into office, they were going after Trump, and they were going after him with you name it. The tax return stuff was bandied about. 2 years later, we're still talking about his tax returns. They went after the delegates. They were trying to get the delegates to flip their votes. They had the voter recount. I mean, everything was just off the rails even before he stepped foot into office. And then once he got into office, everything just got amplified. I mean, turned up to Spinal Tap 11, right? So I'm going to look at some stuff today that is fairly interesting. And what I was trying to wrap my head around, and what I've been trying to wrap my head around, is what's really going on in Europe, right? Are we witnessing something that's really organic and driven by a sense that people are tired of the way things have been run? And is it spreading to other parts of Europe? Because it seems like it is. Or is what is going on in Europe actually being astroturfed and driven with a specific agenda involved? And are the two mutually exclusive, right? Because I use a lot of astrology to understand global events. And is there an astrological sort of justification for this? I think the answer to that is yes. We're going to explore some of that, right? Lucky Trump's got the military on his side. Yeah, I think so. I mean, and that might even be behind what's going on in Europe. We're going to explore some of that. But there are a few things I wanted to jump in before we get into this kind of, is it real or is it Memorex kind of a deal. This came across my screen yesterday, and I actually saw it like just before the show, and I was going to talk about it. I was going to bring it up, but I chose not to because I think we had a plan, or at least I thought I had a plan. I thought I can bring this up today. This is kind of disturbing, and it gets to this idea that nationalism is tied at the hip with Zionism. And so I'm going to read this to you because Texas is a place where there's not a lot of anti-BDS stuff or BDS stuff, but there is a lot of support for Israel in Texas. And Greg Abbott, who's the governor, has adamantly supported Israel. Right? I mean, it's a big deal. In fact, there was during Harvey, you had to sign a pledge, an oath of loyalty and fealty to Israel to get your money. And basically what you were signing away was your right to protest or boycott any businesses that were associated with Israel because the BDS movement is growing, right? So I wanted to read this to you. This is an interesting story. This is just right up the road from Austin. There's a town called Pflugerville. And this is from the Pflugerville Independent School District. And the headline here is Texas school pathologist files lawsuit after being denied work for refusing to sign pro-Israel oath. So she is a speech pathologist. When you get into her story, you'll understand why they were trying to get her to sign this pro-Israel oath. Okay, it doesn't really justify it, but you'll see what I'm talking about. Let me read this to you. A Texas elementary school speech pathologist has filed a federal lawsuit after her school district refused to renew her contract unless she signed a pro-Israel oath. Bahia Amawi, okay, so obviously she is truly a Semitic person, has worked for the Pflugerville Independent School District since 2009 on a contract basis. Each year when it came to the time to renew her contract, the school district did so. Amawi always signed the correct documents, had another year of guaranteed employment. But this year in August, there was a new addition to the contract papers. That addition was an oath, which Amawi was being asked to sign, promising that she will not boycott Israel during the term of the contract and will refrain from any action that is intended to penalize, inflict economic harm on, or limit commercial relations with Israel or with a person or entity doing business in Israel or in an Israel-controlled territory. So we're being targeted now. And look, I don't care if it's Israel or Botswana or French Guiana or Borneo. I don't. You just don't do that. You don't do that. Okay, you don't. You just don't do it. You don't ask somebody from one country to say that I pledge an oath of allegiance to another country. No, you don't do that. That is completely and utterly un-American. It takes away one of our fundamental freedoms, which is the right to either agree or disagree or protest. It takes away the right of consent. Like, I don't consent to what this country is doing, or I don't consent to what this entity is doing. I don't consent to having to sign a document that makes me do this. This is completely and utterly un-American. Let me continue to read this. That was a problem for Amawi, who, along with her family, refrains from buying goods from Israeli companies in support of the global boycott to end Israel's occupation of the West Bank and Gaza. Look, I think they treat the Palestinians terribly, terribly. And there's not a lot of difference, I think, between the apartheid conditions in Israel as there were in South Africa. You know, I think it's clearly a situation that it's interesting too, because it's like there are liberal factions and progressive factions who are really on the side of the Palestinians, and they're kind of rolling out the BDS stuff. I mean, you can see that there's kind of this movement now in Hollywood, you know, led by people like Natalie Portman. In fact, Natalie Portman, who is Jewish, can't even go to Israel now because she's basically said, "I don't support what they're doing in Palestine. It is a brutal and totalitarian regime." Whatever she says, you know, her language. So Natalie Portman, you know, who was the darling, the apple of the eye of that community, right? That group, so talented. Oh my God, she's amazing, right? She can't even go to Israel now because she's spoken out against this. So there's this rising tide in sentiment. It's coming from the left. The right, on the other hand, will defend Israel to its last dying breath. I mean, that's part of now being on the right. You know, when you get into the headspace of people like Jordan Peterson, Dave Rubin, and Sam Harris, and all those guys, it's all, you know, they're big time Israel firsters. I mean, that's like woven into their ideology, and it's so extreme, right? It's like, you know, you've got to support this country, and over here, it's like, well, we're not supporting this condition, so you can't have. This is where we get caught in the crossfire of the Hegelian dialectic, right? You can say, I don't agree with this. I don't agree with how they're treating these people, or you can say that. You can say that for any country. You may say, I don't agree how the Chinese treat some of their people, that they don't have the freedom to practice their own religion, whatever it is, Falun Gong or Christianity. You can say that. But does that make you a China lover? You know, does it make you an Israel hater because, you know, you just don't like the way that they're treating the Palestinians who were there, you know, before 1948? You know, so we get, you know, all of a sudden you're branded just because you have a certain position, right? You're just totally branded. And it's utterly ridiculous. This is how rigid this Hegelian dialectic has become. All right, let me continue to read this a little bit. But aside from that, Amawi noted that the very fact that this was the only oath she was being asked to sign that was to do with Israel was extremely strange. Like, they didn't whip out other oaths. Like, while you're at it, here, sign this oath for Venezuela, right? That you will pledge, allegiance to Venezuela and promise not to say bad things about Nicolas Maduro. Oh, by the way, here's another oath. It's an oath with China. This is an oath that says you will promise to buy Chinese goods whenever available over any other country. Oh, here's another oath. You know, I mean, I think you just roll out all these oaths. You sign here. It's like you really need to buy a car. Sign here. Sign here. Next thing you know, your oaths are all over the place. Maybe that's what they should do. Maybe they should introduce 50 oaths while you're signing contracts, just to make it equal. But we got oaths all over the place. That would water down the oaths a little bit, right? Anyway, so here's what she says. It's baffling that they can throw this down our throats and decide to protect another country's economy versus protecting our constitutional rights. Okay, it takes somebody who was born in Austria and of Palestinian descent to remind us of that. I couldn't in good conscience do that. If I did, I would not only be betraying Palestinians suffering under an occupation that I believe is unjust, but I'd also be betraying my fellow Americans by enabling violations of our constitutional rights to free speech and to protest peacefully, said Amawi, who has lived in America for the last 30 years and is a U.S. citizen. Okay. Additionally, the disabled, autistic, and speech-impaired students, okay, so she's working with disabled students, autistic students, speech-impaired students of the Pflugerville Independent School District are losing out Those who speak Arabic are at a particular disadvantage. Well, because we know that there are more Arabics. there are more people from the Middle East that are showing up in Austin and in Texas, period, all over the country. Right? So now she's got kids who are in Pflugerville that she has to work with, and she can actually speak their language. Okay, so so it says, okay, so as Amawi says, she's the only certified child speech pathologist in the district that speaks the language. Okay, Amawi's attorney has filed a lawsuit alleging a violation of her First Amendment right of free speech. The oath was produced under a pro-Israel Texas state law enacted May 2nd, 2017. This is what I was talking about, which bans state agencies from working with contractors who boycott Israel. This is where it comes out of. When the bill was signed into law by Republican Governor Greg Abbott, he said that any anti-Israel policy is an anti-Texas policy. This is what I was talking about. This is actually a really, really important suit to be heard. Because if indeed, here's what I think will happen. I think what will happen is they will either reassign her, give her another job somewhere else, possibly, although she probably lives in Pflugerville, pay her off and tell her to go away, right? Just here, we're going to give you, 5 years worth of salary and just go away, or there will be some sort of a decision that will be rendered around this, which could have far-reaching sorts of circumstances, right? I mean, it could have a real far-reaching impact on what people are theoretically supposed to sign up for or not. So here we go. I said far-reaching. Here it is. The law is incredibly far-reaching. It meant that some Hurricane Harvey victims were told that they could only receive state disaster relief if they signed the same kind of pro-Israel oath. The author of the bill, State Representative Phil King, later said that its application to hurricane assistance was a misunderstanding. Of course. However, Texas isn't alone in requiring contractors not to boycott Israel. A total of 26 states have enacted such laws, and similar bills are pending in 13 other states. Because what's happening is people are waking up and they're seeing, wow, this is really not a cool thing. There's a lot of not cool stuff on the planet, trust me. And so it's getting a lot of people's attention. The state laws come as the Trump administration has repeatedly expressed its steadfast support of Israel, opting to recognize Jerusalem as the country's capital last year. The move led to global protests and condemnation from other UN member states. So that's kind of a big deal. It's not making headlines, but it is kind of a big deal. So related to that, there was another interesting story that crossed my radar, and it has to do with two very unlikely sort of bedfellows. And they are Alice Walker and David Icke. Okay, Alice Walker and David Icke. Well, what does Alice Walker and David Icke have in common? I'll tell you in just a second. Now, I used to live in Berkeley, and Alice Walker, author of The Color Purple, from Berkeley, right? That's her world. Right, from Berkeley. And I used to see her, there was a time when KPFA, which is Pacifica Radio, they were being defunded by the Clintons. And it was kind of a big deal. They were being defunded by the Clintons, and the Clintons did not want KPFA and KPFK, KCRW, which was probably a little less radical in some ways than KPFA. They were critics of the Clinton administration, and this is when sort of there's like another version of the left. There's a version of the left that does kind of have its eye on what's going on. There's like Daniel Sheehan comes out. Daniel Sheehan he's a lawyer and activist, and he has this group called the Christic Institute, and he was one of these kinds of left watchdogs in some ways. And Daniel Sheen did a great film on Iran-Contra, which I highly recommend. So, but there's this tradition of the left where they were kind of pulling things apart, and I wouldn't say they're like really conspiratorial, but they weren't afraid to go into that area. They weren't afraid to look at sort of what's going on behind the scenes, especially if it had to deal with Republicans or corporations or the military-industrial complex. There was a portion of the left that would kind of go there, right? So KPFA in that tradition was kind of looking into what was going on with the Clintons and the Clinton administration, because they were these neoliberal sort of semi-free market capital centrists, and KPFA didn't have a lot of interest in that. So what the Clintons were doing is they were wanting to, through NPR, they wanted to, well, part of the NPR bill, they were trying to defund KPFA, and there was a huge controversy because they got people inside of KPFA who were more open to what was going on with the Clinton administration and changing the programming and cutting certain shows. So it was a big protest. There was a huge protest, and it started when this news guy Larry Bensky he had a long running morning news show, and he was being let go, and that's when all this shit hit the fan. So they'd have these. I mean, they had a siege at KPFA for quite a long time. I don't know, 30 or 40 days. People sitting out there. It was an interesting time, and you got a firsthand glance at the activism at a street level. So one day Alice Walker shows up, and she decides that she's going to talk, and I thought she said some interesting things. She's an Aquarian, by the way. So so this is an interesting story, and it's the New York Times just published an unqualified recommendation for an insanely anti-Semitic book. All right, so I'm going to just read this to you. I'm not going to get into the whole. This thing is a long piece, but over the weekend, the New York Times Book Review published a full-length interview with Alice Walker, the Pulitzer Prize winning author of The Color Purple. The very first question, what books are on your nightstand? Walker replied with 4, the second of which was, And the Truth Shall Set You Free by David Icke. I love it. I love it. Alice Walker is reading David Icke, and it's on her nightstand. In Icke's books, there is a whole of existence on this planet and several others to think about. A curious person's dream come true, right? That's what she said. I'll read it to you again. In Icke's books, there is the whole of existence on this planet and several others to think about. A curious person's dream come true. So here's this is from a website called Tablet Mag. So this is what they have to say. This passed without comment from the New York Times interview, and the publication passed it on to readers without qualification. That's rather remarkable, because the book is an unhinged anti-Semitic conspiracy tract written by one of Britain's most notorious anti-Semites, former soccer player turned professional hate peddler. Icke is one of the most influential conspiracy theorists in Europe and certainly in Britain. Today, he has over 777,000 followers on Facebook. Over 700, there's those 777s, right? Oh, that's interesting. Very interesting. If you look at, it's like a Monster. If you look at, that Monster drink, Monster Energy, and you look at how it looks like it's 777, right? But it's reflective of like 666. I believe it's from what is it? I think it's Hebrew. It's like the number of the beast. Anyway, 777 kind of folks in there. And speaks to the audiences around the world. Like many conspiracy theorists, Icke claims that a secret conspiracy controls the world. And like many conspiracy theorists, Icke claims that this secret conspiracy happens to be Jewish. In And the Truth Shall Set You Free, the word Jewish appears 241 times. And the name Rothschild is mentioned 374 times. Wow, somebody had to read it, or at least do a spell check. These references are not compliments. Indeed, the book was so obviously anti-Semitic that Icke's publisher refused to publish it, and he had to print it himself. I just think this is an interesting story. And I'm not going to go on record to say whether or not David Icke is anti-Semitic. I don't think he is. I don't think David Icke is anti-Semitic. I don't think David Icke is racist. I don't think David Icke is homophobic. You can take, you can have an issue with his content. You can take issue with his content, but I'm not sure that that qualifies him as being an anti-Semite or a homophobe or a racist. But I think it's interesting that Alice Walker reads David Icke. She says it's great. And they're like, well, New York Times, man, that got right past them. Let's excoriate them and let's ruin Alice Walker's life forever. So these are interesting times that we're living in, okay? Because everything is up for review. Everything. And you have defenders, and you have gatekeepers, and you have people that are, they're going to dig in their heels. They're going to dig the trenches. They're going to occupy the trenches, because what we're talking about now is control for a personal, national, global, and cosmic narrative. And this is where it's at. And the person who controls the narrative basically controls the flow of history. And history is written by the winners. This is fascinating. I think this is absolutely fascinating. But what happens when there's a backlash? Well, when there's a backlash, the intended consequences of somebody going after something, and I've seen this. I've seen this in my own little world here on YouTube. When it's like I kind of went after Tommy Robinson because I didn't really feel like Tommy Robinson was the real deal. Now, whether or not I was right or wrong is regardless of what my stance was, but I experienced a real backlash around that. And I lost subscribers because I felt like Tommy Robinson was a shill and a frontman. And to this day, I still do. That doesn't mean that Tommy Robinson isn't bringing attention to something that probably needs attention to be brought to. That's fine. But who's behind him? Who's sponsoring him? What are his affiliations? And ultimately, what's the end game? That was what I was questioning. I could have done it maybe a better way. I thought I did it to the best of my ability. But there's backlashes now, right? So you go after somebody or something, and it's almost like there's this instant crap of the karmic whip, that we're dealing with almost in real time now. And people are not happy when they're told by a group or organization what to eat, what to buy, what not to eat, what not to buy. Maybe that dovetails with what the BDS stuff is. I don't have enough time in the show to explore that. I'll give you a case in point. I'll get to another story here. After Parkland happened, remember Parkland? David Hogg. There are a number of businesses who decided they were going to, boycott the NRA, or they were going to boycott selling guns, or Dick's was one of them. Dick's came right out and said, we're getting rid of our guns. We're no longer going to sell guns at Dick's. Do you know what happened to Dick's? Well, first of all, they lost a considerable amount of income from actually selling guns, especially in a state like Texas, where everybody has a gun. Everybody's got a gun in a Ford F-150. So they lost out on it. But people said, you know what? I don't want to shop at Dick's. So not only did they lose their gun and their ammo income, they lost their sporting good income. And Dick's is reporting record losses. Dick's is taking it on the chin because they decided, well, we're gonna do this, right? People say, fuck you. We're not gonna go, patronize you. So here's another one, case in point. This is about Chick-fil-A. Now, some of you might have I say Chick-fil-A, you go, oh God, it's that Christian company that closes on Sundays. I'd like to get a damn Christian chicken sandwich on a Sunday, and Chick-fil-A is not open. So I got to go to KFC or Church's or Popeyes to get that chicken sandwich. Well, for one day out of the week, maybe it's okay. That's what they do. Their employees sign up for working there. They may enjoy having Sunday off. It's a novel concept. Chick-fil-A boycott backfires, boosting sales 15% to $10 billion. This is from a website called thegoldwater.com. Says here, fast food chain Chick-fil-A came under attack by liberals because the owner's son, Dan Cathy, said in a 2012 interview that he supports the biblical definition of the family unit. The fast food chain is known for its ads featuring cattle holding signs saying, "Eat more," M-O-R, chicken, C-H-I-K-I-N. The statement from 2012 has recently caused the restaurant to be banned from Rider University's campus all because the owners support traditional marriage. What liberals and far-left activists don't understand is when they become outraged over trivial statements such as supporting biblical definition of the family unit, they're only boosting the intended target's popularity. Don't take my word for it. The New York Post reported Tuesday that Chick-fil-A is on track to become the number 3 fast food chain in the United States. And this is for a company that's closed on Sundays. Just think if they're open Sundays, they could like get up there to number 2, maybe, right? Chick-fil-A is also facing a boycott in Toronto and Pittsburgh, where city officials even tried to ban the restaurant from their city, all because the owners support traditional marriage. Does that sound rational or reasonable to anyone? There is even a webpage dedicated to the boycott called "These are the Best Reasons to Hate Chick-fil-A." There's also a Facebook page dedicated to taking down the fast food chain called Boycott Chick-fil-A. Twitter users were delighted to find that the boycott was not only failing, it was actually resulted in fast food chain seeing a massive boost in sales. One website called Twitchy even wrote a story titled "Boycotts Work, just not when they want them to." Not the way they want them to. Awesome news about Chick-fil-A triggers lefties, and it's delicious. The New York Post also reported Chick-fil-A's recent surge in sales. It quoted Kalinowski Equity Research, which found that Chick-fil-A will soar past competitors Taco Bell, Burger King, and Wendy's, the 3 fast food chains currently holding the number 4, 5, and 6 spots, respectively. The boycott didn't just net Chick-fil-A some free advertising. The fast food chain's restaurant grew nearly 8% to more than 2,100 stores. Sales are also up 15% to a whopping $10 billion. Not to mention the company saw 14.2% growth in 2017. One Twitter user even pointed out how impressive the growth is considering the fact that chain stores are closed on Sundays. That's what I just said. The far-left outrage mobs targeted the fast food chain after the son of Chick-fil-A's founder, Dan Cathy, said he supports the biblical definition of the family unit. Oh no, the pearl-clutching SJWs are furious. How could he say that's such a homophobic and bigoted statement? Oh wait, it is neither homophobic nor bigoted. Saying you support traditional family unit doesn't mean you hate gay people. That is a leap that liberals made and tried to spin into a false narrative about how Chick-fil-A is a bigoted and homophobic community. That's not true at all. He was supporting the position. It's his position, right? It is his position. And if you don't like Chick-fil-A, you don't have to go there. If you want to start a boycott, you can. You can certainly start a boycott. But when you start a boycott like that, you have to understand that there may be unintended results and consequences. And it seems like this is happening. There's a phrase for it. It's called the Streisand effect. When you cry about something or you throw shit at somebody, guess what? It comes back at you. So this is kind of it's an interesting phenomenon. Really, really interesting phenomenon. So, we're living we're living in times that are really, they're crazy. They're interesting. Watching these dynamics at play. Like, I don't really go to Chick-fil-A. In fact, I went to Chick-fil-A one time, and that was the only time I went there because there was really nothing on the menu for me, right? But if that's their business model and that's what they, are into, and they want to, promote it in a certain way, that's their right. They could do that, right? I suppose if somebody wanted to start up a satanic, chicken fast food restaurant, I don't know, the devil's bird or something like that. I suppose they could do that, and they could have employ people that are pierced. And I'm sorry, what I'm saying, they could do that if they want to, but you don't have to go there. And if you want to support a company that has chicken sandwiches, go to KFC. Colonel Sanders was a Mason. That's right. It's right up their alley. So I just think it's interesting. We live in incredibly fascinating times in this way. Speaking of fascinating, now where is this going to go? Where is this going to go? I mean, I just ran across this morning, and this is Christopher Steele, and I'm not going to play the video. I'm going to read the sort of the context of the video. It is a former British agent. This is from Investment Watchblog.com. Former British agent, MI6 agent Christopher Steele just admitted under oath, different kind of oath, in a UK courtroom that he in fact was paid by Hillary Clinton to create a perverted and salacious fake Russian hoax dossier that was used to slander President Trump, which could also be used as evidence for Hillary's attorneys and John McCain to take to the FBI and begin a fake FBI investigation. So this happened. This happened in a British court. The dossier was to be taken to a U.S. secretive federal electronic surveillance court and put before a FISA court judge as false evidence in order to obtain a surveillance warrant on presidential candidate Donald J. Trump as early as the midsummer of 2016. FBI Director Jim Comey, Sally Yates, Rod Rosenstein, Susan Rice, Obama, James Baker, Priestap, Glenn Simpson of Fusion GPS, Bruce and Nellie Orr, Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, etc., all illegally planning the whole conspiracy to spy upon and entrap Donald J. Trump, to frame him and force him from office as an insurance policy while clearing and exonerating themselves and their senior SES officer, Hillary Clinton. And this is some editorializing disgusting treason. They broke many laws by providing fake evidence to a federal judge. That was Judge Contreras. So this is interesting. Now, this is where this guy gets this thing all wrong. It says, also breaking, new Attorney General Bill Barr will prosecute Hillary and the Mueller probe. He says, that's bullshit. Bill Barr is a made man. He's in the pocket of the Bushes. He's there to control everything. It'll never happen. Yeah. Bill Barr is the president's right choice for the vital position, since he has a history of running against the grain in order to force the rule of law. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. No, he was a fixer and a bag man for the Bushes. Bill Barr is there to make sure nothing happens. So this is interesting, but the Bill Barr stuff is come on, this guy's got to be better than this. So, and I was going to talk about that. So again, fascinating world we live in. This guy, Christopher Steele, admits before a British magistrate that that's exactly what he did. Exactly what he did. But is it going to make any difference? Probably not. And will it bubble up onto the mainstream media here? Will CNN, will Don Lemon be devoting a half an hour special to it tonight? Bet your ass he won't. But at the very least, it's a very interesting development. Things are popping and circulating and, cracking all the time now. Like every 24/7 news cycle, there's like something really interesting happening. Really interesting. We had Alice Walker, talking about how David Icke is on her nightstand. We got an American citizen who is born in Austria and is Palestinian, and now she's suing the state of Texas because she has to sign an oath. We've got Chick-fil-A who's being hammered by the left, actually getting bigger and stronger, having more income, taking the number 3 spot in terms of fast food. I mean, we live in a really fascinating world. You just sit back and you watch this stuff and you go, God, this is incredible. All right, so I wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on in France, right, with the yellow vest, because there's a lot happening now. The guy who's basically in charge of Belgium had to step down. He had to step down because there was essentially a coup. There's no government that's going on in Belgium right now because the Belgians don't want to sign this stupid fucking UN Migration Pact agreement. And there was a clash, and there was kind of this sort of the hard right Flemish group inside of the Belgian government says, screw you, we don't want to do this. He stepped down. So the Belgian people are, technically speaking, without a government as we speak. I'm sure they'll be fine. I'm sure they'll be fine. Maybe we should suspend government for across the world for a couple of months to see how it goes. I bet you we'll be just fine. Absolutely fine. That's happening. We've got Hungary. Hungary is now kicking out Muslims. They're closing mosques. The same thing is starting to happen in Poland. Something big is happening. You've got the yellow vest stuff, which there are some people who believe that the yellow vest revolution is another CIA-backed coup. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say the yellow vest revolution might be a military intelligence, wouldn't say backed, but certainly interjected into the mix. Something big is going on right now in Europe, pretty significant. And what we're seeing is this unraveling, potentially, of the EU. Now, there's some people who think that Macron was targeted, and this was a way to take Macron down. If you want to take Macron down, there are other ways of doing it, and staging a massive revolution. I mean, I get the point. If you want to take Macron down, there are many other ways. Trust me, I'm sure. They probably have a dossier that's that deep on him. I mean, anybody who gets to that position of power is compromised. Compromise him in a heartbeat. So, in order to take him down, they're staging this massive coup. I think it's bigger. There's something bigger going on here, and this gets into this kind of idea of nationalism, or this liberal new world order, or the new liberal order that Mike Pompeo was talking about. And where did he talk about that? I think that was from, was it Austria or Belgium? Right in there. So that's what he gave a speech. He gave 2 weeks ago. So I think what we're seeing now is something that does have some manufactured elements to it. Like now it's like, okay, let's push this thing. Let's push this in a little bit. We're seeing some cracks in the walls here. Would a nationalistic Europe be a better Europe in terms of creating this version of a different kind of world order? Because the old Europe, or the EU, certainly represents one model. You have the EU, European Union, the African Union. You would have the North American Union. You have all these unions, right? That was the plan. Put them all together. Union, union, union. There's no countries. It's more geopolitical areas, trade zones. That was the plan. Now we're seeing that begin to slightly unravel. So is that plan now, or the new plan, basically this web of a new nationalistic front? Perhaps. Is it being astroturfed before our very eyes? Because these things do happen, Or are there some astrological elements involved? I contend that with the true node in Cancer, that the energy and the movement towards populism, or towards people that are tired of the Capricornian oligarchic structures, they're tired. People were tired of this. I mean, the governmental sort of yoke has made people weary. And clearly, over the last 2 years, we are suffering from Russiagate fatigue, Mueller fatigue, Trump fatigue, right? And just come along and say, please, Calgon, take me away. Bring me something new. But I think the end result of this is that people are like, enough. Enough. We want to have something different. We want to create something new. We want to create something that's more organic. We want to create something that's more analog, that has to do with, real values, real emotions, real connectivity. And this is the true node in Cancer for the next year and a half. And on the downside, we're going to see these Capricornian and oligarchic structures really begin to, they're going to begin to shake, rattle, and roll. And we're kind of seeing that already. And what happens now is we have this environment where there's this astrological energy that's in the mix. And then it's being pushed, it's being driven. You go back and you look at like a lot of the, quote unquote, big revolutions, Uranus and Aquarius was in play. Like during the time of the Russian Revolution, it was Uranus and Aquarius. If you look at a lot of the color revolutions, recently they were starting up in the month of February, Aquarius. So I believe that there are people who are aware of the astrological conditions, and then they use them as a driver, okay? So when we look at something like what's going on in France, it's good to have a jaundiced view. It's good to be a little cynical. It's good to have your filters and discernment up to see really what's going on. But just like when Trump was on his way to being elected president, I said that it's not about Trump, but it's about the energy. It's about the energy. And the energy was one that was, it was, sort of at that time, radical, a little brash. It was about, deconstructing political correctness. It was about coming away from this kind of overarching political machinery that was headed up by the Bush crime family and running the presidency essentially from 1988, or actually probably 1984 to 2016. That ended, and it was a big part. It was like, okay, well, what are we going to be like? Who could we be like as a nation, or country, as a people, if we're outside of that locus of control for any given period of time? Well, what's happened is that they're not going to allow that. They're not allowing that. They're not allowing for whatever transformation to take place at the level that theoretically it could have taken place with, Trump in the pilot seat. And again, Trump's got huge skeletons in his closet. He's partnered with, a power base that I think is at the worst criminal, at the best, I don't know, diabolical, right? So he's partnered with a certain power base in order to. And I'm not talking about the military-industrial complex. That's a whole other discussion. I'm talking about Goldman Sachs and his buddy BB and secret agent 00666, who's in the White House right next to him at his elbow. I mean, this is what I'm talking about. So, but still, he has not had the ability to kind of do certain things. Whether or not they'd be able to allow him to do that, that's a whole other story. But something's been set in motion now, and just like how Chick-fil-A was being punished, or theoretically punished, by a group that didn't agree with their point of view, didn't agree with their ideology, philosophy, or morality, Chick-fil-A is now flourishing. And the same thing, I think, can be said when at the end of the day, we're seeing what's going on in terms of the absolute and utter just breakdown of the system. Monkey wrench after monkey wrench after monkey wrench. And what's going to happen as a result of this, I think, will be very similar to what's happened with Chick-fil-A. And you're going to see something proliferate outside of that that will be very interesting, striking, powerful. Because this is, people are resilient. As much as we are bombarded by all the crap in our atmosphere and our food, we're resilient. And ultimately, I think we were going to rise to the occasion no matter what happens. Right? No matter what happens with this system, at the end of the day, I have faith and belief in not just the American people, but humans by and large. And there's going to come a time where when the dust clears, right, we'll be closer to having a more cohesive, egalitarian, and healthy life on this planet. And it'll be an outgrowth of what takes place, not based on ideology, but based on real organic values and truth. That's my opinion. So are movements like what's happening in France AstroTurf? Yes, they are. Are they also organic, and is there an astrological connection to the events? Yes, there are. The two are not mutually exclusive. So don't be dismayed when you begin to read about the machinations that are going on there. Don't be dismayed. Factor them in. What's really important is the energy and wherever this thing is going. Remember, keep your head on a swivel. That's another piece of advice I'm going to leave you with today. What do you got here? Rhonda says, I think everything's going to get much better soon. By the way, the EU tag tax was tagged on anno bill that's just gone through in your politics USSA, and now it's global. So I wait Wikipedia and Google removing all they do, linking cities both, or paying the tax. Yep. What else do we have here? Websites that utter anything or allow any utterances which doesn't fit the post-truth world, which was the last bill. Yeah, so that's gone on. They've made some adjustments. Like everybody got emails. What about 8 months ago? All the new privacy policies and stuff that came from the EU. Totally from the EU. It's time for people's BS to come flame. It's going to happen. It's already happening. You know, so the moral of the story is try not to be a dick because it'll come back to you. Robert, do you think the best form of government is theocracy? I don't know about that. You know, you could have a theocratic despot. You know, I'm kind of more in the anarchic sort of realm. But you know, government means you need to have an organizing principle, and a theocracy would be an organizing principle. I think the organizing principle has to be really kind of a very new model. It's got to be a new model. It's got to come from inside each and every one of us, and because those old organizing principles they're not. You know, it's like the theocracy would be like Islam, right? A certain version of Islam, Wahhabism. You know, they want to spread Wahhabism across the planet because it's feudal. It's, you know, it's medieval. It's what it is, and it has a large locus and system of control associated with it, which is why it's a new flavor. Problem is that there are too many people already suffering from cognitive dissonance already. People are waking up, man. Edgardo, they do. But people, I'm telling you right now, there's just too much. There's too much on the table right now. People are waking up. What else do we have here? New outer planetoid discovered in our solar system within a 1,000-year orbit will pass between Uranus and Neptune in 500 years. Wonder what this symbolizes astrologically. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Maybe spend some time with it. Michael says, getting ready, hit the slopes and towels. There you go. Now that's living right there. That is living. Don't forget to do that. Don't forget to live along the way. And you know what that means. Hey, there's Juana Castañeda. Buenos dias, Juana. Hey, I'm getting ready to get out of here. This will be the last flame until I think probably next week, because I'm going to be out of Flameville for a few days. Okay, so thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful holiday. Merry Christmas, whatever you celebrate. If you're a Hanukkah person, you know, happy Hanukkah, Merry, whatever, you know, happy Saturnalia. If you're that, you know, hail Saturn, keep the Saturn in Saturnalia. So everybody take care of yourselves. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to see what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. Thanks again for being a part of today's broadcast.